Hey everyone, I'm Zaida and this is Read Books Get Lit. It's December, so this is usually the time of the year when I start thinking about what I'm going to use next year as far as planners, journals, and trackers go. So I thought it'd be kind of fun to look back at my old reading journals that I created for myself. I should point out that I didn't actually complete any of these journals. I've been in a very bad, very long reading slump that has kind of gone on for years. So I have not been reading a lot. I have not been filling out my journal either. So this is going to be a very revealing video. I'm going to get very vulnerable with you and share these details on the internet. But if you are someone who likes to keep track of your reading or is thinking about keeping a physical, tangible reading journal, maybe you'll find some inspiration, or maybe you'll just find something amusing about my very high expectations I had for myself and how I came nowhere near meeting them. But anyway, without further ado, let's jump into the video. Okay, so this is my A5 Archer and Olive dot grid journal. I really like the quality of these journals. It comes with 2 ribbon bookmarks. It has this elastic binding and then also this pen loop. I've never used the pen loop, but if you use this for like a daily journal, it can really come in handy. So I've used this one notebook to document both 2022 and 2023 since I had enough pages. I usually start off with a calendar view or just sort of a cover page, if you will, to make note of what year it is. This is my daily reading log. Here's the first half of the year and then second half of the year. The intention is just to color in the spot or the rectangle for whichever day of the month that I read. So as you can see, I did not read for many days, but I did try to get back into it towards the second half of the year. I do try to balance out my trackers with quotes and doodles. So this is a quote by Confucius: "No matter how busy you may think you are, you must find time for reading or surrender yourself to self-chosen ignorance." Here on the other side is my Goodreads tracker. I guess I had a goal of 25 books that year, but I honestly don't remember coming up with that. But this is my little key to identify the genres of the books I was reading. It's interesting that I read mostly fantasy that year. I think because I was trying to actively read outside of my typical genre. My typical genre is actually historical fiction. So I definitely was making an effort to read other things. My TBR list. I like this huge book little image here, but what I was supposed to do was write all of the books that I already owned that I still had left on my TBR list. I think a lot of readers, we have a bunch of books that we just kind of collect but don't get to and don't actually read. So this could be a way to keep track and kind of just reference to make sure that you are actually reading the books that you own rather than buying new ones or borrowing more books, you know? So I do bring this back in future years and actually fill it out so you'll see what it's supposed to look like. I kept track of some of the giveaways and arcs that I won throughout the year. This is another doodle and a quote. "She reads books as one would breathe air to fill up and live," Anne Dillard. I'm not really an artist. I don't draw very well, but I try throughout the journal. I do what I can with what I have, I guess. This is sort of the entire list of all the books that I read throughout the year. I only read 16 in 2022. That's okay. What's really interesting is that I apparently gave Gods and Monsters only 2 stars, which seems so brutal. Even if I don't really like a book, on average, I'll give it 3 stars. So I must have really not been into Gods and Monsters. Sorry, sometimes it happens. I think because I really love Serpent and Dove, and then Blood and Honey was okay, and then clearly Gods and Monsters, I was just like, what happened here? You know, sometimes that happens. Okay, I need to take some time to show this page some love. So first of all, the quote, "We read to know that we are not alone." C.S. Lewis. That's perfection. But also, this book stack, again, I am not good at drawing. And yes, this is very simple, but I really love the way that the books turned out this first time I did it. You'll see in future journals that I've tried to recreate it, but I really think that the first time that I drew the books is the best the books turned out, in my opinion. Author birthdays, I just wanted to keep track of some of my favorite authors and their birthdays throughout the year, but clearly didn't fill it out as I wanted. Okay, so now we're getting into my calendar views. It's basically the same thing as the daily log, except a different layout. I did use my headphone stamp to indicate when I was listening to an audiobook. And then, of course, there are months where I just didn't read anything. Things do start to pick back up in August. September was a pretty solid month. So was October. And then I did taper off halfway through November and then did not read in September. Here's another doodle and a quote. "A room without books is like a body without a soul." Cicero. On the other side here, I don't typically reread books, mostly because I just have so many unread books that I want to get through. But I do remember I reread Carry On and Serpent and Dove because I was continuing on with the series. So these rereads were more of like a refresher before I went into the new books. Authors of note, I wanted to note-take the new authors I was reading this year. I clearly didn't, but that was my intention here. Also, I really like this stamp. It's very familiar if you were of a certain age and you remember going to the library and the little library card in the front of the book. So DNF did not finish. I don't remember why I stopped reading Tamed or Yoke, but I think with The Truth About Forever, I just wanted to start reading a different book, which is okay. The Truth About Forever is actually my favorite Sarah Desmond book. It's my favorite YA contemporary book. I've read it multiple times, so I don't feel too bad about not finishing it that time. Another doodle and a quote. "I like stories where women save themselves." Neil Gaiman. And this very minimalistic drawing of a woman reading a book. I just wish that I had spaced this part out. It's a little too close to the edge of the doodle, but that's okay. Book birthdays. This was intended to keep track of all of the upcoming newly released books that year. Just clearly did not do anything with that. The A to Z tracker, I have seen this in many other book and reading journals. Essentially, you are trying to fill out the list and use the title of the books that you've read and match them to the alphabet. Okay, this layout, I hate this layout. It's organized, but it also looks super cluttered. I think I just should not have put the title in between here. I think I would also kind of draw a border around every month just so it's a little bit more distinguishable, if that makes sense. But this Bookish Days spread is kind of just keeping track of fun bookish days throughout the year. So August 9th is Book Lovers Day. September 22nd is both Dear Diary Day and Hobbit Day. So if you want to curate what you're reading that month to align with a certain day, that's a fun way to use this. Or if you're on Bookstagram, or if you're a booktuber and you want to create content that goes along with some of this, that's also a really good way to use this too. Book Bingo is another popular tracker. I got through a few, which good job me. I got through 2022 release. I can't even remember what book that was, but I did apparently do that. International author, multiple timelines, a book with a purple cover, 2 authors, and then a book that is more than 500 pages. So this is one of the only purely statistical, like straight stats page. I'm not really into stats and tracking that kind of stuff, but I do think this is really useful if you are into stats and if you do this multiple years in a row. That way you can really kind of see and compare. You can track your progression. That might be a fun way to use this if you are into stats. I was supposed to write the title of my favorite book I read every month here. I clearly didn't. And I have another doodle and a quote here. The more that you read, the more things you will know. The more that you learn, the more places you'll go. Dr. Seuss. And my attempt at a hot air balloon. Oh, yes. So this is my bookshelfie. I 100% was inspired by Heba El-Sabah. She is a crafty person, scrapbooker, journaler, and she has been creating this layout in her book journal for many years. And I basically was like, that looks fantastic. And so I created a bookshelf here, used my book stamp, and added some fun cats and cup of tea. It's very plain because I didn't color any of the book covers in, but you'll see in later years that I do color it in and it looks much better. And then here is the end of the year reflection page. Clearly did not reflect on anything, but this could be fun to kind of just review what you've read, you know, what you thought about your reading for that year. So if you are into reflecting, and this is really more on the journaling side of things, this could be a fun way to close out the end of your year. So because most of my spreads do repeat, we're just going to flip through this unless there's something I want to share. But here we go into 2023. Okay, so this is the TBR book spread, and this is how it's supposed to look. So I really went through all of my unread books. I listed them out, and if I read them, I think I used blue, and I think the gray means that I started it and then didn't finish, or I just straight up donated it. I can't remember which one, but this is how the spread is supposed to look. Here's another spread that I kind of want to point out. So I combined sort of the book haul pages, and these are tracking all of the new books that I picked up this year, also the giveaways and arcs that I won. I clearly bought too many books. I should have just read through more of my TBR list, but these are the books that I bought for myself. And when I say gifted, I just mean gifted myself. So I was just buying books for me. That's all. So audiobook page is a little bit different. I changed up this title, which I really, really liked, and I reread all of these. So majority of them, I think, except for maybe 4 of them on this list, the rest of them were all rereads because I personally, I find it very hard to listen to a fiction book for the very first time, having never read it before. It's very hard for me to listen to it and retain the information through an audiobook. It's much easier if I've already read the physical copy first and then I listen to the audiobook basically as a form of rereading it. So most of these are rereads. The 4 that aren't, if you ask me over the top, Naturally Tan, and then Wildflower. These are all memoirs from some of my favorite entertainers. So I was able to listen to this for the first time and retain everything because I kind of approached it as a really, really long interview. And I watch a lot of interviews about my favorite entertainers on YouTube, so that was kind of how I approach them. But other than that, I definitely cannot listen to fiction books for the first time and actually retain most of the information. I have to read it in a physical hard copy book. Added this little post-it to kind of tell myself what I was going to put here. I do like that this end of the year reflection page is way more minimalistic than the previous year because there was stickers and colors, but I like that I left it kind of plain to just, in theory, if I actually did fill this out, that would kind of give me more space to play and see what I wanted to include, how I wanted to organize it, format it on the page. So that is where we end 2023. Just kidding, I completely forgot that I did this. So what I had intended was to actually write out all of my reviews for all the books that I read that year. And I went so far as to getting the photos of the book covers, printing them out, cutting them, and pasting them here in my journal. And I wrote down my ratings, I filled out the title, author, genre, and the dates that I read them. And I really did this for every single book that I read that year. I just didn't fill out the actual reviews. I just did not come back and do all of this. So you can see I got halfway there. I tried, I did most of the work, but then just didn't follow through. And see, I even didn't write out the last couple books of the year. Such a bummer. But I did complete this, and I'm very happy with the way that this turned out. So this was another spread inspired by Heba El-Sabah. I saw that she had cut out the covers of all the books that she read so she could put it all in one spread. And I thought that that was such a cool idea. You know, it's different from the rest of your journal where it's mostly just text. It's mostly just black and white, and it can get a little bit boring. But adding this spread with all of the colorful colors, I thought it looked super cool. So this was, at least I finished this. I might not have gotten through all of the individual reviews and all of that stuff, but I did finish this spread and it turned out pretty good. Like I would love to keep doing this spread. It's very fun. Again, it's something nice to kind of look back on at the end of the year, and even in future years, you know, looking back on what I read when, the visual representation of the covers is just really fun. So definitely one of my favorite spreads from 2023. And that is officially the end of that year's journal. Okay, so we are moving right into 2024. As you can see, I took out the calendar view and I just stuck with the year, used my very large stamps, and then I also used this book stamp I have. It says bibliophile, noun, a person who loves or collects books, someone who finds joy and peace of mind from reading books. And I thought that was very appropriate. So I do have to say, 2024 was a brutal year. There was a lot of shit that happened in my personal life. So I did not really have the bandwidth. I didn't have the capacity to read. And it is very much reflected in the lack of anything that happened. but I still wanted to go through 2024 and just show you what I had hoped to keep track of last year as far as reading goes. I did change up this Goodreads tracker before it was all individual squares, and I just kind of did it one continuous line. And I will say, again, the books from the first time that I did this, that's really my favorite, but I do like that I started using stamps to stamp out the quote here rather than handwriting it. So if there's a way that I could combine this stamp set with the first year's book drawing, that would be perfect. But I think that, this will always be a page in my reading journals. I just love the quote. I love the visual of the books. So one of my favorites for sure. Okay, so this was ambitious of me, and what was supposed to happen here, and I don't know if you can really see, but I did map out the months of the year, and what I had intended to do was print out photos of the book covers of every book that I got from both Fairy Loot and Illumicrate throughout the year, just to have that visual representation of the books that I was receiving from my subscription. But again, I did not get to it. This layout of my book haul, I really like. It's different from the previous years. I think the fact, I really love this stamp. Let me get a close up there. I love that stamp, and then also the one at the bottom. And just, it's very clean, and I like that it's very clearly like bordered and outlined. So this is my preferred way of coming up with a book haul spread compared to the previous years. Okay, Battle of the Books was another very ambitious spread. I've seen other book readers, bookworms, YouTuber people doing this in their journals, and I thought it was really cool. So essentially, it's a bracket system where you would face off the different books that you read throughout the year, basically until you get your favorite book that you read that year. And again, I would have printed out the covers of the books had I actually read enough books to facilitate this spread. But this is something, again, it's pretty ambitious, but contemplating for maybe a future journal, I don't know. I just think it would be really cool to actually see it completed. This is a new one, Best of 2024. So I had picked specific categories, and I would have, if I read enough books, I would have gone and kind of given a winner for each category. So I picked best storyline, best characters, favorite setting, instant reread, number one OTP or one true pairing, and blew me away. And here we are with this year's reading journal for 2025. As you can see, I kept it very simple, just stamped out this year and used 2 of my book stamps, plus added this border. I just drew lines around it, but I think it kind of makes the spread pop in a way, if that makes sense. And that's a wrap on a review of my book journals. So again, this was 2022 and 2023. Here is 2024 and 2025. I honestly don't know if I'm going to be making a reading journal for 2026. I really like the process of making these journals. As you can see, I really do take the time. I go in here, I map everything out with pencil first, and then I come in here with my stamps and pens and make it all nice. So I really like the process of going through and creating these spreads and layouts. But honestly, right now, I don't really know where I am reading wise. I feel like I've been in a prolonged reading slump that has honestly lasted several years. I I think most of my energy is focusing really on the writing side of things, and I would love to return to reading in a very consistent way, but I just don't know how to do that right now because my mind is so focused on the writing side of things. So I'm not sure if I'm going to actually commit and create a reading journal for next year. If I do, and if you would like to see what I come up with, let me know, and I'll be happy to share that. Do you keep track of your reading in any way? Even if you don't use a physical notebook, do you keep track online? I know some people use Goodreads, other people have personal trackers and spreadsheets that they've created for themselves. So if you do, let me know what you use. I'm always interested in how people plan and organize and track things. So leave a comment below and I'd love to hear about it. Thank you again for being here. I really do appreciate the support. If you liked this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment, share with friends, do all the good things, and hopefully I will see you again in the next video. Have a great rest of your day, and I will see you next time. Bye.